Stephen King's stories have sparked some of the most chilling films ever made, but not every adaptation hit the mark. In fact, some were such disasters that even King himself couldn't stand them. One movie on this list was so bad, King sued the production, forcing them to strip his name from all promotion. Dreamcatcher had all the pieces to be a hit: an A-list cast, a big budget, and a story by Stephen King. But instead of flying high, it crashed and burned. A group of friends with telepathic powers head out on a hunting trip, only to end up battling parasitic aliens trying to take over humanity. Sounds wild, right? Well, King himself eventually called the movie a train wreck. Turns out he wasn't a fan of the novel either, admitting it was written during his recovery from a car accident while on OxyContin. Not exactly the foundation for a masterpiece. Stephen King really doesn't pull punches when it comes to Firestarter. Even though it follows the story from his novel pretty closely, King couldn't stand the movie, calling it flavorless. It's about a couple whose kid develops pyrokinesis after they undergo a shady medical experiment, but despite the fiery premise, the movie itself was a dud. King compared it to cafeteria mashed potatoes, bland, boring, and completely lacking any spark. And yeah, even King didn't understand why the kid's hair blew every time she started a fire.
What have you done to my father?
He's resting, and he's fine, just like you. And he knows you're all right, and he sends his love, and he wants you to cooperate with us.
You're a liar!
Now, what kind of talk is that from a nice little girl like you?
Go to hell!
Oh.
Let's just say King's directorial debut with Maximum Overdrive didn't go as planned. The film, based on his short story Trucks, turned out to be a chaotic mess with homicidal machines terrorizing a group of survivors. King has been brutally honest about his experience, admitting he was coked out of his mind the entire time and had no clue what he was doing. Critics hated it, audiences ignored it, and even with its tiny budget, it flopped. Now, Needful Things is one of those movies where the story behind the scenes is almost more interesting than the movie itself. King originally praised the 4-hour version of the film shown on TNT, saying that it worked as a miniseries. But when it was cut down to 2 hours for theaters, the result was, in his words, almost indecipherable. A mysterious stranger opens a store in a small town, selling people their heart's desires at a price they couldn't imagine. Problem is, the movie didn't have enough time to tell all those stories. And even with a longer cut now available, interest in revisiting it is limited.
He's a good man.
He's a con man, Polly, or something worse.
King Salem's Lot novel is one of his personal favorites, so you can imagine how he felt about a return to Salem's Lot, the amateurish straight-to-video sequel nobody asked for. The original miniseries adaptation from 1979 has become a cult classic, but this so-called sequel? Not so much. King dismissed it in a 2007 Time magazine interview, saying it lacked any of the inspiration or structure of his original story. In short, it was a swing and a miss.
What the hell is all this secrecy about it? What the hell's going on in this town?
Shut up! Just shut the f*** up! And you go away!
What a rude boy talking to his father like that! And in front of company!
Even King's early short stories weren't immune to terrible adaptations. Graveyard Shift is a classic monster tale about a textile mill overrun by mutated rats. Sounds promising, but the 1990 adaptation? Not so much. King himself referred to it as just a quick exploitation picture in a 2016 interview, and critics couldn't agree more. With a 0% score on Rotten Tomatoes, it's safe to say this one ranks among the worst. You'd think a film directed by John Carpenter, hot off the heels of The Thing, would be an automatic win, right? Not in King's book. Christine, the story of a high school kid who becomes obsessed with a possessed Plymouth Fury, is widely loved by horror fans for its ridiculous premise and dark humor. But King wasn't impressed. In a 2003 interview promoting Dreamcatcher, he called Christine boring, and even compared it to The Shining, and not in a good way. The original Children of the Corn was creepy in all the right ways. Kids worshiping a murderous deity in a cornfield? Yeah, that'll mess with you. King gave his approval for the 1984 adaptation, but it didn't take long for the franchise to spiral into mediocrity. With 8 sequels and counting, King has made it clear he wants no part of the chaos that followed. In a Deadline interview, he bluntly stated, "I could do without all the Children of the Corn sequels." Same, Stephen, same. The Shining is hailed as one of the greatest horror films ever made, but Stephen King is not a fan at all. Stanley Kubrick's adaptation was visually stunning, no doubt, but King couldn't stand the changes made to his story. He famously called it a Cadillac with no engine, praising its beauty but criticizing its lack of soul. He's especially salty about Jack Torrance's character arc, or lack thereof.
Little pigs, let me come in. Not by the hair on your chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in.
If you thought King's beef with The Shining was bad, wait until you hear about The Lawnmower Man. This 1992 sci-fi horror took such a massive detour from King's original short story that he actually sued the filmmakers. Yep, it was that bad. King won the case, and they had to remove his name from all promotional materials and cough up $2.5 million in the process. Let's just say this adaptation wasn't exactly mowing down the competition.
Hurt me, please.